So we come to our GPC servers training class of June 25th, 1953. We've been considering the basic principles of heavenly magic, the magic of living, and in the pattern of that consideration, our recent meditation has been upon the Shekinah magic, or the reality of Shekinah. And you have gradually been coming to a realization of that reality. In our meditation yesterday, we concluded the hour by reading from the 14th chapter of John, which has been the subject matter of these recent considerations. And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another Comforter, that he may abide with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. But ye know him, for he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. Now, until you begin to actually comprehend the reality of the Shekinah pattern of being, these words are more or less incomprehensible. You will recall that the word Father is used to signify sometimes the one who dwells, and sometimes the aspects of the presence of the one who dwells, and sometimes the one who dwells and the evidence of his presence. We must learn to see the word Father, as the master used it, as being fluid, in other words, carrying a number of significances, not always the same. Now here, in this text, and I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another Comforter, we clearly have the indication that he used the word Father to signify the one who dwells, as distinct from the Shekinah pattern, that is, the evidence of the presence of the one who dwells. I will pray the Father. Now, if we remember the basic pattern here, first, the one who dwells, and then the fire and the light that glows and the cloud of glory, or approaching from the outer standpoint, we have, as we noted yesterday, the unification point at the level of the sea of glass, which is the point where the pneumoplasm generated in your own body meets the cloud of glory from the higher level Shekinah pattern. Now, there was brief mention made in yesterday's meditation, and perhaps I should enlarge upon it a bit to be sure that you see it clearly. That there is, of course, the reality of the centering in the Lord or Father in relationship to yourself as an individual, and there is the Shekinah pattern, functioning perhaps on a limited basis, but nevertheless present in you, or you would not be alive. You could not function. But the Shekinah pattern of your own being can mean comparatively little until it is established in the proper pattern of relationship with the higher level Shekinah pattern under which you are properly focalized. Here, then, you begin to see yourself as a point of being in a creative triangle within which you are drawn to point at the apex of that creative triangle, where we have established the focalization of the one who dwells within, who establishes the Shekinah pattern for all who are contained within that pattern of focalization, or the creative triangle. Now, if that is clearly recognized, you will see that your individual Shekinah pattern can mean very little until it is established in right relationship to the point of focalization, which establishes the higher level Shekinah pattern under which you are to function. And then, with that right pattern of relationship established with your point of higher level focalization, you begin to realize that you are then, and only then, in position to establish the correct patterns of relationship between yourself and others, whether on your own level, or those who are of a higher vibratory pattern, or those who are of a lower vibratory pattern whom you are to particularly serve. And this interrelationship of the vibratory patterns is so established that it provides a perfect setting for every man, woman, and child upon the face of the earth. How few there are who find it, how few there are who enjoy it, how few there are who have so responded that they can even begin to experience the fullness of this beautiful heavenly design, the reality of the Shekinah patterns, which the Master called the kingdom of heaven, which is at hand, available to us here on earth, without regard to the invisible realms that relate to what is sometimes classified as the hereafter. So, here the Master was clearly indicating the distinctions in the Shekinah pattern. Now, he was not suggesting that there is not a Shekinah pattern in you, but he was suggesting that you are supposed to be responding to a specific higher point of focalization, and that with respect to that there is an overall or overshadowing of the Shekinah pattern, the shadow of the Almighty, the secret place of the Most High, as it is extended to you within the scope of the divine design. And only as you harmonize with the design can you begin to receive, in relationship to yourself, the control factors, so that you begin to balance in relationship to truth, and come to point so that the power, or the potential power, the energy, the force of God's love, can begin to move through you, causing power to manifest. There is not power until energy or force has been brought into a specific channel of expression, a controlled action of some kind. So energy or force becomes power when it is controlled in a specific direction for a specific purpose. That energy, the energy or force of God's love, is everywhere present for all people at all times. But most people are not attuned to it. They do not know how to receive it. They are not equipped in the actual sense to allow it to manifest as power in their lives. But without that power, we can do nothing really worthwhile. And we certainly cannot, without that power, help to bring others into a state of attunement with God, so that they may begin to be aware of that which is at hand, the reality of the Shekinah patterns God has provided for them. Now, you, as a point of being, having a Shekinah pattern, have within you the basic essentials, the capacities to have meaning on earth. But unless that Shekinah pattern is allowed to function in relationship to your body and mind and heart, it obviously cannot have adequate manifestation. And under the law of the positive and the negative, it is obvious that that pattern present in you can have no meaning until you yourself become a part of a creative field. And the first great commandment clearly points the way to what that first step is: to accept your true point of focalization, to respond to God on a basis which allows you to have a positive point of polarity for yourself. Until you have that positive point of polarity for yourself, there is nothing to draw the patterns of the Shekinah reality out from within you into expression. And then, after the creative cycle has been established between you, the negative point, and your point of focalization, the positive factor of the creative field, you are in position to begin to establish the patterns of relatedness in a personal or a more personal sense on the level of your own life and in relationship to those whom you are to serve. I might mention that according to the original divine design, the patterns of relationship or harmonization which culminate in marriage were supposed to be worked out under the reality of the Shekinah patterns. In the world as it is, there is very little recognition of the divine design, very little actual conformity to the control factors, and we see all around us in the world, you will contact continually in your fields of service, married couples, technically, legally married according to the laws of man, who are not in any sense married spiritually, who do not have any proper pattern of relationship, and who, from the standpoint of God, are not married at all. And it doesn't make any difference who performed the ceremony or who said what. They may be called married or be legally married in the sense of the vibratory of the laws of man, but in the sense of the vibratory factors of God's design, they do not belong together. They are not married, and well, therein you find the seeds of untold tragedies. And when we begin to see that when the Master spoke of marriage, he was not talking about any civil ceremony, he was not talking about the words that might be pronounced in some ceremony by a minister, a rabbi, or a priest. He was talking about the marriage pattern of reality, which God has designed. Those, therefore, whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. But merely because human beings have decided that they want, for some reason or other, to live together, and anyone from a justice of peace or a judge or a minister or a rabbi or a priest or anyone else so authorized, merely because some authorized person has said the words, does not mean that God has joined them together. And while you will not be in position to come out and say that very often, probably it wouldn't be wise, it wouldn't help you solve the problems that are involved, you must see it, you must know it, and recognize that you are undertaking to help people who are not married, who imagine that they are married, and who are trying to function as if they were married when in actual fact they are not. God has never joined them together. From the standpoint of the divine design, they, are are living together without the divine sanction. And no church as such on earth can just arbitrarily give that sanction. Human beings have completely misunderstood the Master's teaching in this regard, and have assumed that because someone, priest, rabbi, minister, justice of the peace, someone has said some words, that people are married. Well, legally, yes, technically, but very often it is simply legalized adultery. It is not the true pattern of the divine design. This isn't to say that we should undertake to dissolve such legal or technical marriages, not at all. But if it be possible, we will, according to response, help the individuals involved to begin to experience the reality of the Shekinah pattern of attunement, according to the creative triangle under the one law. And it may be that they can reach a point where they are married in the sense of union in the Shekinah pattern. And if they are not, and if they do not so respond that they can be so joined by God in the Shekinah pattern, there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. We will provide such help and inspiration as we may, but the basic troubles in the world are very often centered right in this field. You will find that in relationship to those who come to you to be assisted, just about 90% of the ladies who come to you, married ladies, 90% of their problems will rest right in the sphere of unsatisfactory marital relationships. And the problems with respect to men don't go, it isn't very much less than that, really. And right in that field where the couple should be creating that which is a real core of the manifestation of heaven on earth, they're continually creating discord. They're creating a little hell of their own. And because they have their little hell, their bodies get disturbed, their emotional patterns are all upset, they don't have the proper attunement with God, and their relationships, instead of being the highest form of worship before God that can be known to man, become something, well, sordid, unsatisfactory, something that ought not to be. So it is not from the standpoint of undertaking to disturb the existing patterns of legal marriage that we approach the problem, but we refuse to accept the dissolution of a legally established marriage according to the laws of man as divorce. It may, for convenience, be called divorce, but from the standpoint of the Bible, that's not divorce. From the standpoint of what the Master was teaching, divorce would be the separation of those who have been joined in the Shekinah pattern, which is an altogether different thing. Those who have been joined by God. And so we must not confuse the Master's instruction with respect to divorce with the legal machinery man has instituted, whereby the so-called legal marriages are either established or dissolved. The dissolution of a legally established partnership under the laws of man is not, in any true sense, divorce, although it's so called. But it isn't separating those whom God has joined together. And so, we begin to see that right here we have the basic sphere wherein ill conditions are created by the human beings themselves. These ill conditions are not imposed, generally speaking. Of course, sometimes the so-called love of parents for one or the other of the partners in the marriage relationship will keep interfering, tend to produce wrong conditions. But if those things are allowed to impose upon the so-called marriage, it's still a matter of the individuals themselves allowing it to be so. And it comes right back to the fact of individual responsibility, which we must never overlook. We cannot escape. So, these human beings do not have the ill conditions imposed from without. They create them within, so that what should be a home in the sense of a bit of heaven on earth becomes a hell. And until the patterns are changed in actual fact, so that there begins to be harmonization on the basis of the Shekinah pattern, you cannot actually clear the marital difficulties that may be present. And until the marital difficulties are cleared, patterns of attitude and relationship between husband and wife, we cannot have the right environment for children. And without the right environment for children, you cannot actually clear the difficulties which rest upon children, which they have to contend with in their bodies and minds and hearts. And so it goes on and on, out, until these conflicts that are engendered and maintained and created in the homes between husbands and wives flare into war on an international scale. The seeds of war, the shooting that takes the sons of those same married couples to the battlefield to become cannon fodder, were planted and germinated in what were supposed to be homes. If we had even a comparatively small percentage of the married couples in the world who were actually creating the vibratory patterns of heaven in their relationship, the reality of home, it would soon be easy to release enough of the power of God on earth under controlled conditions so that the war factors could be easily taken care of. But it isn't by guns and bombs, as much as we may need them under present circumstances, but it isn't by guns and bombs that we're going to solve the problem. The problem can only be solved when we reach a point where we can inspire those who are legally married to begin to move into a pattern where they can be married in the sense of the divine design. Stop merely living together for some pattern of convenience. They reach a point where they let themselves be married in the Shekinah patterns of reality, wherein they can begin to create a bit of heaven. They stop creating hell, stop creating the discords, the diseases. Why are the mental institutions filled to overflowing? Why are the hospitals crowded? Why are there so many handicapped people in the world? Why are so many children born crippled and deformed? Why do we have epidemics of polio? Why do we have cancer and heart disease and all the rest? Because those houses that were supposed to be the shell for a home have instead been the shell for hell. And human beings have created and are creating these conditions under these particular circumstances. We do what we can to alleviate by inspiring specific individuals who respond in the right direction. But until there are men and women who are willing to let themselves be drawn into the true pattern of the divine design, we cannot possibly hope to have the machinery of reality, which is necessary to the controlled release of the power of God in a manner which can clear these ill conditions. And so, let us not become confused in our own minds. We must begin to see the conditions in relationship to these basic patterns, always. And until they are so seen, your attempts to help individuals will be as confused as the individual's own attempts to help himself. And we'll get nowhere. There must be an acceptance within ourselves first of the reality of that divine design, so that we can begin to be whole and completely wholesome individuals, through whom the power of God may so manifest that others may be inspired to stop their business of creating hell and begin to create or share God's work of creating heaven on earth. And as long as human beings are engaged in creating hell, you cannot by any means whatsoever make them be well. If they're going to create hell, they're not going to be well. I think sometimes we ought to put a plaque up on the wall somewhere. If you are creating hell, you'll never be well. And so, here we begin to see the means whereby we can be of real service, not just treating symptoms as is necessary for some of those engaged in what we call the healing arts. It's fine and dandy. I thank God for all the doctors, whatever their sphere of expression, their earnestness and desire to serve man. But until we reach a point where we see beyond the symptoms, until we stop assuming that the cause is merely just something in the physical body as such with respect to illness, until we begin to see that human beings are creating their states of illness, they're gradually committing suicide. And this suicide, whether it just takes them 30 seconds or 30 years to get the job done, still suicide. Until we see what they're doing, we cannot be of any real service in helping them to stop doing it. Now, the Shekinah pattern of the higher level of focalization connects up then with you at the point of the sea of glass, clear as crystal, where the cloud of glory and the pneumoplasmic substance of your own being begin to blend. The pneuma substance has been generated in you by reason of your function under the law through the working of the Shekinah pattern of your own being. But you have to begin to respond to your higher point of focalization before your body, which is in essence really a factory for the development of pneumoplasm, can be brought into the control patterns of truth so that you may begin to give body to the higher level Shekinah pattern. not as individuals that we can achieve these things. It is as members, many members of one body, the body of God, or the Christ body, or whatever we want to call it. But it must be actually one body in the reality of control and design, function, achievement. So you are to be a cell in the physical body of God. And if you are a cell in the physical body of God, you will not imagine that you can separate yourself as a cell from that physical body of God and achieve anything. You reach a point where you know that you cannot, of and by yourself as a human being, accomplish anything. Even if you think that you're trusting God, because God's design and pattern of being indicates that you are to be a member of a body, and that the whole body of humanity is supposed to be the body of God on earth. And until it is, we're not going to have heaven on earth. So, he said, and I will pray the Father. Now what, what is the point of orientation for this expression? Yesterday we introduced the principles of the focalized point of orientation for the manifestation of that which was proceeding from the Father and appearing in or through the Shekinah pattern of being. We have here some of the basic factors essential to the creative process. And the Master gave us a very beautiful outline of these principles right here in the words I have read to you. I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter. Another comforter. That signifies that he recognized that he himself was a comforter, that there was more than one comforter. He himself made manifest the reality of one comforter, but there was to be another comforter. So, we must at once see that there are at least two comforters. And he says, I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter. He was one comforter. The Father here in this case is the one who dwells, as is put in the Old Testament pattern. The one who dwells. From what level was he speaking when he said, I will pray the Father? He was speaking from the level of his focalization in the fire. Now let's review just a moment to be sure that you have this clearly in mind. Approaching the evidence of the presence of the one who dwells, what do you first begin to perceive? If you have the proper attunement, proper pattern in the pneumoplasmic substance with the cloud of glory, you begin to perceive, probably by feeling, sometimes under some circumstances perhaps by seeing, but you begin to perceive the cloud of glory. And it isn't until after you have begun to perceive the cloud of glory, whether you realize it or not, that you begin to see the light that glows. You must be attuned to the cloud of glory before you can see the light that glows. Otherwise, it's all dark, and words are words, and sentences are jumbles, and there is no perception, no recognition. You're in the dark. And the mere fact that the light is shining in the darkness doesn't mean anything. The darkness comprehends it not. So there has to be the reality of what? The life, the Shekinah life, is the light of men, the Master said. The Shekinah life, L-I-F-E, is the light, L-I-G-H-T, of men. So until there is an attunement with the Shekinah cloud, you cannot begin to have the process of resurrection which will give you enough light give you enough life so that you can begin to see. When the baby is first born, it has eyes, the physical eyes, but its seeing is very, very limited. Some there are who say it doesn't see anything. I think that depends on the baby. But there begins to be the practice of function in the light. The babe has been in the darkness of the womb. After birth, it begins to function in the light. And it begins to use its instruments of seeing. Finally, it begins to see things, not just blurs, not just light and shadow, but gradually there begins to be focus, and attention is centered on some particular object, and its outlines become evident. And gradually, the baby begins to realize that this outline is Mama, who always changes diapers and feeds and things like that, and this outline is, I don't know quite yet. Finally, it turns out to be Dada, and on we go. Gradually beginning to comprehend the things that are at first faintly seen. And that same process exactly works out in relationship to the individual who is beginning to see spiritually, to perceive. And so we see that the human being who begins to go through the process of resurrection or rebirth comes out of a realm of darkness, the womb of the world's darkness, and even though he is born, he still does not see. And because he is accustomed to thinking of himself as an adult, he judges himself and says, well, now, if this is rebirth, why don't I see? I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the other thing. I don't understand this. I have 1,000 questions. How can I comprehend this? Back and forth. And so he spoils it all. Instead of being as sensible as the little babe, and just to look and keep on looking, and not say too much, not ask too many questions all at once, the babe gives itself a chance. It doesn't start asking about the man and the moon the third day after it's born. It waits a while. It has sense enough to keep still unless it gets hungry or uncomfortable and has to let Mama know. But it doesn't ask a lot of questions. How sensible so-called adults would be if they were as wise as babes, who would just let it work out, learn to see and not expect to comprehend it all in a minute. Gradually the seeing process unfolds. Gradually the shapes begin to appear and become identified, and we begin to know. Well then, having become attuned to the Shekinah life of the higher level pattern, you begin to have light. You begin to see. And having become attuned to that Shekinah cloud of glory, you can begin to function in it and through it. You may reach a point where you're not constantly conscious of it. It's there, you're at home in it. And being attuned, you begin to see the light that glows. The second step. And having become attuned to the light that glows, your mind begins to comprehend. The first few years of a child's life, it learns more than it does in any later comparable period. It learns very rapidly. You can learn rapidly too if you let it work out the way the babe and the little child do. What was it the Master said? Except ye become as a little child, ye cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. There it is. And this is what he was talking about. Unless you become as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven that is at hand. Not some hereafter, not the usual human concept of being saved. That isn't what he was talking about at all. He was talking about the processes of living, the practical living of a life on earth. It's always amazed me that human beings imagine that the master wasn't exactly practical. Everything he said has to be translated somehow. He was talking about some vague hereafter. We have to maneuver and maneuver to find out how it applies down here. Only man has assumed that he was talking about a hereafter. He was talking about living life on earth. He taught men to pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done," where? On earth, as it is in heaven. So gradually, there begins to be a pattern of comprehension, of seeing, and there is an attunement in and with the light that glows. Having established this step of attunement, a rebirth or illumination, there begins to be a comprehension, a perception of the fire of God's love. And at first the human being tends to be a little afraid of the fire. The idea of stepping into the fire, that would be, he just couldn't do it. He gets a little close maybe to try to get warmed up a little bit, and then he runs back again, and he doesn't go near it until he's thoroughly chilled. He just has to have another little touch of God's love. But finally, he reaches a point where he's not afraid of the fire if he keeps responding. Finally, he reaches a point where he begins to realize that he can walk in the fire, step right into it, and that it won't burn him. If there are any bonds, like with the 3 Hebrew men, if they're bound, the bonds that are binding will be burned away, but they can arise and walk in the fire. And there in the fire, what will they find? Just what the 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, found. And what do they symbolize? They were walking together in the flame, and the king, symbolizing the human mind, he thought he was destroying them. He came and he looked in the burning fiery furnace, said, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the burning fiery furnace? Behold, I see them. See 4. Instead of being bound, they're up walking around. And the 4th is like unto the Son of God." Exactly what I've been talking to you about in all these classes. The 4th. For in the center of the flame you begin to see, once you've dared to step into it, you begin to see the one who dwells. The one who is like unto the Son of Man or like unto the Son of God, whichever pattern of approach you're using. They both mean the same thing. And so, in the middle of the fire is the one who is like unto the Son of God. There's the outline. The cloud of glory, the light that glows, the fire. And this is the Trinity of God's Spirit, or what we call the Christ Spirit. It's all the same thing. The Christ Spirit, the Spirit of God, made available to human beings. That which is revealed in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Absolutely identical, absolutely in harmony. Not one single break. It's all there. Once we see that, we begin to recognize that if we are to function in relationship to the creative works of God, we must be able to live and move and have our being in this Shekinah pattern. And the Master said, "I will pray the Father." From what point was he speaking? What was his point of orientation for the manifestation of the Word or the prayer? Obviously, he was referring to the one who dwells when he said Father. So, his point of orientation was where? In the fire of God's love. We know him as the Lord of love. And he said, I will pray the Father, and He will give you. He will give you. You don't have to buy. You don't have to bargain. I will pray the Father, and He will give you another Comforter, that He may abide with you forever. Now, there wasn't supposed to be some intervening centuries when He didn't abide, according to the Master's own word, that He may abide with you forever. To abide with you forever. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, the self-active world cannot receive, because it seeth Him not, neither knoweth Him. But ye know Him, for He dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. The light that glows in the Shekinah pattern of being, under the focalization of your own higher level in the divine design, is with you, always with you. But until you begin to function under the law, it is not in you. It is with you. It is with every man, woman, and child upon the face of the earth. But what did the Master say? Whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth Him not, neither knoweth Him. The world doesn't even know of its existence. Oh, there are certain preachers and others who have talked about this, that, and the other thing, but they don't know. They don't know. And the world cannot receive because it does not know. Cannot see. You begin to see when you begin to have the experience of rebirth or resurrection. And once that begins to be a reality, you begin to see, you can begin to receive. But ye know Him. How could the Master say that? Ye know Him. There are a number of reasons, only one of which we will mention at the moment. But ye know Him. What was the nature, character, quality of the Master's expression? He was working on the basis of orientation in the fire. But His words, His expression of life and ministry, established in the orientation point in God's love, conveyed what? Truth and life. So that He could say, I am the way of love, the truth, and the life. But if He was speaking from the point of orientation in the fire, it is obvious that He did not intend that the pattern of function in the Shekinah reality of being for another Comforter should be the same as it had been with the Comforter which He had made manifest in the essence of God's love. God's love does provide the reality of a comforting factor when it's accepted in relationship to truth and life. But He said, another Comforter, even the Spirit of truth. So the orientation point in relationship to the other Comforter was to be in relationship to the light that glows, not in the fire as such. It would be backed by the fire. But the orientation point would be in the light that glows. And we begin to see that that is the process that has been working out. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. But ye know him, for he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. Now when shall he be in you? When you have allowed yourself to be received into the Shekinah pattern of being. When you have let your pneumoplasmic substance begin to be the body for the higher level of Shekinah, first the cloud of glory, then the light, and then the fire, and finally the established relationship with the one who dwells. And he shall be in you. I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. Now what was the I? The I was the centering of the orientation point in the fire of love. Not a human personality. Not a man as we think of the body, the physical body of the one man, Jesus. He wasn't talking from the standpoint of himself as a man. The Father who dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself. So, we begin to see that he said, I will come to you. What was the point of the I? The orientation in the fire. The comforter of love. I will not leave you comfortless, but I will send you another comforter. The comforter of the Spirit of truth, or that which has its orientation centering in the light that glows. And this comforter shall abide with you forever. You will receive him, let it be so. He shall abide with you forever. And forever is a long time. And the Master meant what he said. He said, further, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come unto you. What I? The reality of God's love. The orientation point, the centering reality of the other comforter was to be in the light that glows. But in that expression, I will come unto you. You will continue to receive the comforting power of God's love, even so.